Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Russia, ko Latvia, ko Poland, ko Ukraine, hoki oku tipuna, I whānau mai au I Glasgow, ko Kahurangi taku tama, ko Alex Gorey toku hōrangatira, ko Sandra Spilg toku mama, ko Harvey Harris toku papa, ko Abby toku ikua. Kia ora koutou. Thanks for having me. To be honest, before being asked to do this presentation, I hadn't really thought that I had a career. Like, I just do a job and I get paid and I like it, which feels really great. And I also realized that I haven't really thought about having a career since I was a little kid, when we got asked, you know, what you want to be when you're older. And when I was wee, I remember we got asked to write down what we wanted to be, and I put down that I wanted to be a naturist instead of a naturalist. And for those of you that don't know, naturist is the one where you're naked. And and they just put it on the wall, and they just let me have that. So I don't know what that says about me and my school and my parents, but they just embraced it. And I think, to be honest, that kind of sums up me and how I got to where I am, and that there's a lot of kind of randomness, saying yes to things, chance, and yeah, so that's where we started. And that kind of came from me always wanting to do stuff with the environment. And I remember when I was at school, that's when we still talked about global warming and the environment, and now everything's changed in terms of how we talk about it. And actually throughout my uni, it's always been kind of how do I do science stuff and do humanities stuff at the same time? And that's kind of always been there. So I grew up in Glasgow, and one thing you might know or you might know about Scotland when you go to uni is it's free, and it used to be free here. And when I went to uni there, I went to the University of Edinburgh, and I studied social policy and sociology and sustainable development. And when you apply to uni in Scotland, you have to pick. You don't apply just to a university, you have to apply to a course as well, and you have to say, this is why I want to do this course. And to be honest, I was pretty loose in what I picked, mostly because it was free as well, so I just felt like, yeah, I'll do this, and I'll try. And it's 4 years. And in my first year of uni, my mum told me that she was moving to Aotearoa with her partner and some of my siblings, and if I wanted to come, then I could come, and if I didn't, then I could stay. So I made the decision at that point to leave and to come to Aotearoa. My mum lived in Paraparaumu at the time, but she's moved many times over. And I went and studied at Vic. And I remember meeting there, and I realised pretty much straight away that I didn't know anything about being in New Zealand, and how could I study social policy in a country that I've never lived in. That just felt a bit crazy. And before I'd even applied for anything, I actually thought I wanted to be not a naturist, but maybe a scientist or an English teacher or something. And then I realised with all of those things, I was like, do I just want to be an English teacher because I like reading, or is it just because I want to teach? So a lot of the things I thought, I was like, is this stuff I like to do, or is this stuff I want to do as a job? And that's kind of been a recurring theme, is actually not everything needs to be a career. You can actually do a lot of the things you enjoy outside of work, and I feel really, really strongly about that. So anyway, I came to Vic, and I did development studies, which even when people ask me what that is now, I find it really hard to explain. But it was a BA, but it had that sciencey element as well. So I did some environmental resource management papers, which were really interesting. Did some environmental science papers, and it was also a lot of geography. And I thought at that point I wanted to do real system-y stuff, you know, like looking at the big picture. And when I was at Edinburgh doing social policy at Edinburgh, it was a lot of, I'd refer to them as lovely, angry, socialist Scottish men. And our tutorials were just like fiery, and I kind of thought that's what it was going to look like when I came to uni here, but people are a lot more chilled. And the uni there was like, people would swear and get up, and I was just like, whoa, yeah, cool. And I thought I wanted to kind of do more of that too, so I did lots of health policy papers back in Scotland and stuff. And then when I came here, I was like, I can't do policy because I don't even know. I just found out John Key was the Prime Minister, and I was like, I have a lot to learn before I can do more stuff here. So yeah, I went and did development studies, and then I went and studied Spanish as well, and social anthropology. And at that point, I was just saying yes to everything. And suddenly, because I was paying for uni with a student loan, it felt much more like I had to decide this is actually what I want to do. So I was trying to be selective, but at the same time, if I'm being quite honest, again, what Jane was saying, I just followed my heart, and I was like, this looks great, I'll do this. And I was really trying to do a mix, because I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. And with the Spanish, I was like, that's really useful. I can travel, I can learn. Anthropology, just so questioning everything, basically. And I loved that. I still think if my brain was like a discipline, I think anthropology is how I think, like social anthropology, in terms of just not assuming anything, basically, and kind of trying to look at things in a really, thinking about power, thinking about structures. And I think actually that really is what led me to end up being a social worker, because a lot of the social anthropology lecturers I was with were social work trained originally, which was quite interesting. So anyway, at that point, I thought I was going to go after uni and travel around South America with my friend, and I had no plans after that. I was just going to live it up in Colombia and just study more and maybe work doing some gardening and just live it up. And then unfortunately, my friend who I was going to be going with, she passed away. And I then didn't want to go traveling anymore, because I didn't have my friend with me. And I felt a bit stuck, and I could have gone back to Glasgow, and I could have, I had a lot of options. So, but yeah. And at that point in the background, I'd worked throughout my time at Vic at the reception. I did like student health reception, call centre. Working at the uni when you're studying is actually quite great if you can get a job there, because especially doing it on a computer, because when it's quiet, I shouldn't say this, and you get it right, read your readings, which was really great. And it was great. I was just surrounded, I could do both at the same time. So that was really great. And I worked like 25 hours a week when I was studying, which I wouldn't recommend, but being at uni at the same time was great. So anyway, so my friend passed away. I was trying to figure out what to do, and I'd only been in Wellington, and I didn't really know anywhere else, and I'd heard about Dunedin, and the way people talked about Dunedin was like partying, and by that time I was 24, and I was like, I don't want to party like that. I'm a bit, not feeling like partying. I want to just go to the pub and play a board game and read my book, and I'm over it. So I did, phoned a few people, and this is kind of a theme as well. I did a lot of, I feel like job stuff is a lot like dating stuff. Now I'm like partnered up, met a Dunedin man, we're here now, but there was a real period, work felt like trying to find work, it was all like dating. So I'd phone up at uni, I had a conversation, I was like, what's the course, you talk to the course coordinator, and I won't mention which university it was, but I remember talking to someone and they were like, I actually don't think you'd like it here. And I was like, it was in a city that I will not name. And I was like, yeah, how come? They're like, it's a pretty boring place. I was like, either you're trying to make me not come, or you really don't like where you live. But either way, I didn't go there, and I came here. And I studied the Master of Community and Social Work. And as I said before, I didn't have, the subjects I did at Vic didn't really talk to me about the place, like Aotearoa and history of the place. And what really kind of drew me to this degree was particularly the Kaupapa Māori social services paper. And there was basically every paper that they offered had that element of you need to know where you are. You need to know where you're working. And at that point, I didn't actually think I was going to stay in Dunedin. And then obviously I met my partner, who's from Dunedin, and he whakapapa's here, and he wasn't going anywhere. So I was like, right, we're here. And I loved it. And I think my favorite thing about that degree was that it gave you placements. So I think that was one of the most valuable things that I was doing and learning. At that point, I'd been studying for 5 years kind of continuously. So I ended up studying for a whole block of 7 years whilst I did so many random jobs whilst I was studying. But yeah, I loved it. So my first placement, I was at the community hospice as a social worker. And at my second placement, I ended up at high school in Dunedin, and they paid me whilst I was studying. So it was so good. So I could leave my retail job and I could work at the same time as I was studying. So that was a real bonus. And it gave me a really good insight, again, a bit like dating, of what you like and what you don't like. So, and what I really wanted was to be challenged. So I actually had no idea of there was a lot of people in my course who were like, I want to work OT, or I want to work here. And I was like, I actually don't know if I care so much about the nature of the work, i.e. like if it's working in a school or whatever. Like, I care about working somewhere where the people are really great and I feel really well supported and I can have a whole life outside of it. So I was more thinking about the lifestyle I wanted, and I kind of felt like if you're working with people, it's always people are people and they're great and they have the challenges everywhere. So I was kind of less focused on the nature of the mahi and more about what the workplace was going to be like, and that's kind of followed through for me the whole time. So yes, I did that job, and then I got offered a 2-day-a-week job, so I kept going until I found a full-time job. So that was 2 days a week at the school, and I loved it. And the really cool thing about social work, which was drawn to me, is you're still doing that big system stuff. So you've got that policy, you've got that critical thinking, but you've also got the people and the community. And actually, I think a lot of jobs that people do, I'm like, oh, that sounds like social work, to be honest. Like, you don't need to study social work to be a social worker, but you do, because you have to be registered. But there's some nuance. And what I kind of realized as well was when I was studying policy stuff at the beginning was I really liked the idea of doing policy, and I interned at the Council for International Development in Wellington, and I was like, yeah, policy. I was like, just because I like it doesn't mean I actually think I'm not actually that good at it. Like, I could do it. I don't think I'm the best at it, and I don't actually really enjoy it, and I think there's a lot of other people that are really good at stuff. And I was hearing Jane talking about her team and how everyone's got specialties. I think it's so tempting to want to do something because you want to do it, and actually realizing sometimes people, they find a job that they're really good at and it makes sense for them. And I think for a while I had a bit of envy, like, oh, I really want to do that, but is it because I want to do it, or is it because it looks good? And so yeah, you kind of figure it out. And what I realized is, yeah, system stuff's really important, but actually I could do that in social work, and that's kind of comes with the territory, to be honest, criticizing systems whilst working in systems. And I really like working with people, and I love the chaos of people, and I kind of thrive in chaos. So that was what kind of drew me to it. So yeah, how much time do I have, by the way? 2 minutes. Grand. Okay, I'll talk about my actual jobs. I did work in sexual violence, crisis response stuff. Everyone was like, oh, it's so hard. I was like, yeah, but it's all about the boundaries and how you do it. I left there, and then I went on a big speed date, and I did a lot of job interviews, and I got offered jobs, and I was like, yeah, blah, blah. Basically, I was looking for a place where I felt really supported. I didn't have this pressure of, sometimes there's a wee thing in NGOs where they're like, welcome to the family, which sounds great, but sometimes it's like there's a lot that falls on you. I wanted to be able to leave at the end of the day and not feel like it was all on me. I wanted to be replaceable. I think that's actually quite nice. I want to be able to have stuff that I need to do and someone else will pick it up. So I ended up at Well South doing COVID response stuff. And basically they told me, we don't have a job, we don't know what social workers do, we think we need one, our board thinks we need one, you need to write your job description and then you'll do the job. And at the end of your 6-month contract, you can try and find another job in this organisation, because we don't know what social workers do in primary health, but if you can find one, great. And just through talking to people and doing some of the COVID work, I ended up finding a little place for myself in the former refugee mental health and physical health team. And they were like, oh, we really need a social worker. And I was like, you guys are great. So my whole team, basically, most of them are from other countries. So most of them are from refugee and migrant backgrounds, which is great, really diverse. Everyone speaks different languages. They gave me a job. I then had to write my own job description for that as well. And that job was 0.5. And then I looked for a 0.4 because I didn't want to work full time. And then I found a job at Mirror Counselling, and a lot of people are like, but you're a social worker, how do you do that? But basically most of the people there are coming from different backgrounds. So we've got OTs and nurses and lots of other things. So currently I'm doing a postgrad in child and adolescent mental health through the psychiatry department at Auckland Uni to kind of support my study, which again is like sciencey and humanities. It kind of blends them both. And I love it. I love doing 2 jobs. Would actually recommend it. But you have to be really boundaried because it's very easy to then do lots more work. So that's my 2 jobs. That's how I got here. And yeah, that's me. Thanks for having me. Cool.